So happy birthday to you, Karen. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of information over here. The Meerkat Magic Conservation Project, the Meerkat Magic Valley, OUDTSHOORN, Western Cape, South Africa. And it is the 24th of October, I believe, 2009. And we are watching the Ungu Lungu Meerkat group. It's very tiresome just to use data names we found in our research when watching the Meerkats. We found assistants tend to remember common names much better. Because this is our second main site on the Meerkats, I decided to stick to African themes. I like the sound of the names. Xhosa, Tswana, Shangaan, Venda, Siswati, Yei, Ndebele, etc. And all of these different animals have names. In fact, there are anonymous votes online on our web, the Wild website, where people can actually choose the names as well. What we've got happening at the moment is the 4 babies from the 25th of August litter up and about. And we've got some allo grooming taking place. We saw auto grooming briefly earlier where one animal was grooming itself. Now allo grooming is taking place. Again, getting rid of external parasites is a major part of the meerkat's daily life. Grooming these off also cements the social bonds, we believe. While the others are grooming and the babies are still waking up, please notice how alert the dominant female is there to the left. It won't be too much longer before the meerkats decide to go off and get their breakfast. As I was mentioning, quite often they hold on to each other or they lean against each other while they're sunning like that. Alright, I'm going to go over to you now. Any questions? You can ask me anything you like. Fire away, please. Yes. What would you like to know?
When they've recognized someone as a predator, they teach this to their young?
That's a very nice question. Yes, indeed. What we've found, and again I'd like to refer to this as this associative learning process, whenever an older animal and more experienced animal makes a certain sound, an alarm, certain behavior, a certain reaction, the babies also learn when that sound is made and what it's made towards. So they start learning as well what is potentially dangerous and what is not. And that's quite an important point here as well, because meerkats in different areas recognize different threats. If you had a meerkat, say from the Kalahari Desert here, it would treat Egyptian geese, which are harmless water birds, as threats because it sees them so infrequently in the Kalahari Desert where it's so dry in many places. So martial eagles in the Kalahari Desert and martial eagles here would be given the same alarm calls. They're recognized to be threats in both areas. So the same sounds are used to indicate threat, but they have different triggers from place to place. So babies here learn what is potentially dangerous, but at first they treat everything as dangerous until they in fact learn from the older animals what really is dangerous and what isn't. It's like a fire drill. I've seen meerkats running to burrows with babies, and then the babies seem very alert, and then many of the older meerkats wander off again to go look for food. But some of them stay with the babies and they scratch at the burrow, and it's like they're making a big fuss almost, using non-scientific terms like that. It seems to be that they're imprinting the bolt hole system or the escape tunnel on the baby with that sound and that reaction. When you hear the sound, this is where you go. They definitely seem to teach the young. All right.
So that if they recognize, if they've had a bad experience sometime with like a human being.
Most certainly.
Like that,
Yes.
Even if they're never threatened again, it'll be passed down from generation to generation.
Ah, that is such an unusual comment, and I'm very glad you mentioned it. In the farming areas and reserve areas I've worked in, wildlife in reserve areas often is very tolerant of vehicles. If you climb out of your vehicle, they're often very intolerant because they're not used to that. In farming areas where people have been driving around, chasing livestock, moving quickly, or riding on horseback after ostriches, etc., the animals that have seen this pass on the equivalent of fear. Whenever they see these things, they react quickly and the babies learn. That's right. So when I arrive, they're completely intolerant of me. They treat me in the farming areas just as they would any other person that has disturbed them in the past, and it takes many, many years. It takes over a year or more using my techniques to get within a meter or so of these animals. 3 or more years before we can actually start to follow them away from the safety of their burrow. And that's why I get them accustomed to certain sounds and various gestures and scents, as I've mentioned. So yes, they definitely do recognize people to be a threat, and most people don't see meerkats closer than 100 or 2 meters away with the animals running off or diving below ground. So once we've built a certain kind of tolerance and a new association, we can override that distrust, but only for a select few at a time. So the animals here will still distrust people that might try and approach who are not making the sounds and signals they recognize. Right. In a nutshell, yes.
I'm just fascinated. I realize you're talking loudly and making plenty of noise.
Yes.
And it's what you would think was the exact opposite that you should
yes.
be doing. Right?
Thank you. And it certainly is. If you go into another reserve, for example, and start going brrrr, brrrr, please notice how the animals carry on doing what they're doing when I'm making the sounds. Brrrr, they will treat you as a threat and disappear. And you probably won't see many animals at all. But in this area with thousands of hours of making these sounds, I've actually built a very selective tolerance to them. Again, when I make the sounds, I let everyone else in the environment know I'm not a predator, I'm not using stealth, I'm not trying to creep up on you, I'm not trying to attack you and give you a surprise. Here I am at all times. They know where I am. And over time, and this is a great deal of time, because we don't make sounds at all at first, gradually the animals learn to recognize just us and anyone with us to be non-threatening. So yes.
How about when you're here on your own? Do you talk then too?
All the time I make sounds to them. Of course I wouldn't be giving any facts out. But I certainly would be making the sounds at all stages, except, and this is the important point, if a predator was interacting, I would not make any sounds, and if that happens over the morning, and it can quite possibly happen, I'll ask you to please freeze your movements. If the meerkats look towards me, I'll simply make a hand gesture, the visual signal which they recognize without using sounds. Because if I made sounds then, they will associate the sounds together with the predator, and it will draw their attention away from a potentially life-threatening situation towards me, and I don't want that. So even now, when the meerkats stop looking at me, or I make a hand gesture, they will look away again, and they can focus on what's going on around them.